And joining us right now, senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast, our buddy Eli Lake. Happy Martin Luther King Day to you, Eli.
Happy Martin Luther King Day to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. The president gave a speech on Friday laying out, what he called reforms to the NSA program. But I don't know. Were there a lot of reforms? It looks like now we're arguing over where the government's going to store all this data it's going to take from us, and not whether they're going to do it or not. If we're down to the point where we're just arguing where it's going to be stored and who gets to hold on to it, is there really a debate at this point over the NSA?
Well, I mean, the issue of storing this metadata, as they call it, is, of course, it was the original concern with the Snowden leaks. That was one of the first major leaks that came out. And it's unclear whether private third parties storing the data is any less of an intrusion in one's privacy, or whether they could protect that data from other hackers even better than the government. So that's a whole separate issue, and it's unclear whether that would necessarily get you the kinds of privacy protections that many of, I guess you could say, people more sympathetic to Snowden have been calling for. But there were, I thought, not to zag when others have zigged, I think it's fairly significant that there was a review at the White House of the foreign leaders that the NSA eavesdropped on and snooped on. And in that review, they said that there were dozens of foreign leaders where they would stop doing that. It was according to a briefing before the president's speech. That there were going to be more privacy rights considered for non-American citizens, so that the NSA could not just dragnet up other people who they would listen to. That there would be also, I think it's significant that there are more restrictions for how analysts can query the database wherever that is stored. So I do think that there were more significant reforms than some of the folks had said on both the left and the right. At the same time, he's keeping this program intact in the broadest sense, in that the data will be stored somewhere, and the U.S. intelligence community will be able to query it.
Eli, can I just ask you a quick follow-up on the foreign leaders question? Yes, he did say that he was going to, instruct the NSA not to snoop on foreign leaders and our allies. When this story broke, didn't Jay Carney and the White House deny that they were snooping on Angela Merkel? So, how did
they denied that they knew that they were snooping on Angela Merkel.
Oh, okay. That doesn't make me feel better.
They knew that.
Let me turn to the Winter Olympics in Sochi, because, Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, has been raising some concerns, others as well, saying, look, I wouldn't send my family there. I'm not sure we should be sending the athletes there. The Russians have said we'll do everything we can to make it safe, but Mike Rogers says the Russians are not sharing the latest intelligence because it's embarrassing to them. What do you think we should be doing here in this regard?
At this point, there was a point, I think, at which Mike Rogers on one of the shows said, well, if I go, I'm going to have a lot of security, so it's a little different than from others. At this point, there's already going to be a U.S. delegation that's going. I don't think that there should be any kind of, last-minute, people shouldn't necessarily go. But it does raise this issue. Also, I suspect, and this is not me reporting anything, but I suspect one reason there might not be total sharing on the part of the Russians is that the Russians may not want the United States or anyone else really knowing exactly the full extent of their security measures, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that scene in The Princess Bride where they try to round up almost everybody who they think is suspicious before, I think, the king's birthday.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that, I think, which is that there are measures the Russians are taking to try to make the Sochi Games safe, which, would not stand the scrutiny of public oversight.
Yeah. Well, there could be that.
Eli Lake, the Middle East obviously is continuing to loom large, and we saw a lot of action last week with regard to Iran and this idea of a secret deal and a side deal. Is there anything else burbling up about that? And is John Kerry and the Obama administration still moving full speed ahead with trying to work out some sort of nuclear deal with Iran?
We don't know the full details of exactly what was agreed with Iran at this point, because it's not a public document. We have a sense of the broad outlines at this point. Then you have these political issues, but that is, I think, becoming an Iran nuclear deal is becoming the signature foreign policy push of Obama's second term, particularly as the old meme or the old narrative of, Al-Qaeda is in retreat and is being defeated is in some ways contradicted by the fact that so many of al-Qaeda's franchises and affiliates are gaining territory, whether it's in western Iraq and Syria or other parts of Africa. So they're going to really, I think, push very hard for this deal. The big question now is, what exactly is Congress going to get to say about that deal? And that's really what I think this fight over sanctions is about, which is I think it's Congress trying to say, we think this deal at a bare minimum should say this, this, and this. And I think that the Obama administration does not want to have this thing, come up for a vote in any way in Congress, either symbolically or otherwise.
What about the strain this puts on the U.S. relationship with Israel?
Well, it's not just Israel. It's Saudi Arabia and America's allies in the Gulf don't understand, because what they look around and they see Iran's role in the Syrian civil war, and they see Iran, screwing around with Bahrain and things like that, and they say they certainly don't look like they're looking for peace in any other sense. So why would you think that they're, willing to actually keep their word now? And there's a huge disagreement at this point. So that, I think, has frayed important alliances that have lasted for decades.
Eli, did you see Jack Ryan's shadow agent or shadow recruit this weekend?
No, I saw a preview of that, and I have to say it looks pretty awesome.
I enjoyed it a lot, and it's actually kind of cool. It's a retelling of the Jack Ryan character. He was inspired by the events of 9/11 to join the military and then get into the CIA.
In the new version?
Yeah, so I think you'll like it, Eli, knowing your taste. And by the way, speaking of your pop culture knowledge, you've had a very busy year. I would forgive you for not being up on the hip-hop and rap scene, but do you have high hopes for the Grammys coming up here?
I'll be watching the Grammys. I have high hopes. I think we're in a good period. We'll see what happens.
You think the Grammys get it right? I always think the Grammys were a little too boring with hip-hop. No? You're okay with it?
Well, I mean, the history, the Grammys were late to the party, historically, but they've been good recently.
All right, Eli Lake endorsing the Grammys for the hip-hop and rap aficionados out there. Thanks, Eli.
Thanks, Eli.